Welcome to American Dreams, Keys to Success, with your host, Alan Olson.
Welcome back. Today I have with me Rob Black. Rob is a local celebrity here on KDOW Radio, runs the Rob Black Show every weekday from 7 to 9 a.m., and Rob is joining us today to talk about the economic outlook for 2012. Welcome, Rob.
It's good to be here, Alan.
So what's going on out there?
So far, the year's going great. The stock market is continuing a rally, up 8% through the month of February. Not too bad. I think it's been up 7 out of 8 weeks. Corporate profits are looking good. Jobs are slowly creeping back to where we want them to be. They're not at good levels, but they're getting better. Valuations on Wall Street are at historic lows. So it's a great opportunity. If you believe in corporate America, that they'll continue to believe in capitalism, then I think the markets will trend higher this year, but we are ahead of ourselves in the short term.
You know, it's pretty amazing the role oil is playing a bigger role in terms of moving markets these days, isn't it?
Yeah, there's 3 things that can move markets negatively this year: oil, Europe, as well as housing in the United States. But oil did make a big move from 95 to 108, 110 pretty quickly. What
do you think? When I was in my economics class, macroeconomics class, in college, they talked about that sometimes oil can be used as a tax, a way to kind of speed and slow down the economy. And what's your thoughts on that?
Well, oil's a commodity, so with the weaker dollar policy that we've had for the last 10 years, it's helped inflate the price. But yeah, absolutely. We are a nation that lives paycheck to paycheck, and if we're spending more on filling up our gas, if it goes from $50 to $75, that means we have less, $100, per car per month, and we are a paycheck-to-paycheck type of economy, so it does act like a tax, and it does slow us down. As it gets higher, we slow down our economic activity, and that tends to slow down demand and lower the price of gasoline again.
It's amazing. It's starting to creep up over $4 a gallon right
Target's
now.
$5, they say, by Labor Day.
Oh, my gosh.
For big cities like San Francisco.
Well, I think we're going to be feeling that in the pocketbook before too long.
I think so. And again, it'll be interesting. Strategic reserves, they get opened. Of course, that's kind of a political maneuver, not necessarily solving the problem. In the last 10 years, the United States have become a little less dependent on Saudi for our oil as we've opened up some drilling and we found new technologies to get oil and gas out of the ground.
You know, it's interesting. We saw the strategic reserves tapped in under the Clinton administration back in the late 90s, and the price of gas at the pump was falling down to near $2 a gallon or so, and
right.
Seemed to be a great shot in the arm for the economy. This time around, though, doesn't seem to be. You've heard on the GOP side the threat to put the strategic reserves in place, but I haven't heard too much from the Democrats. What do you think's going on there?
It's interesting to me the way strategic reserves play out. Again, they're a short-term solution. It can be used nicely if Iran's acting nasty or trying to do a little saber rattling. But for me, oil hasn't really been, or gas hasn't been a problem in my life. I remember $3 gasoline in the 80s, then it goes down to $2, then it goes up to $4, then it goes down to $3. Overall, it's not been that inflationary. It hurts Europe a lot more than it hurts the United States. And right now, Europe doesn't need another drag on their economic scenarios with the problems that are happening in Greece and Italy.
Keeping all that in perspective then, I guess it's, as long as the people out there, they have jobs, food, and a place to live, everyone's happy. So that if the oil gets too expensive, it has to correct relatively quickly in order to keep stability out there.
And in the 70s and 80s, last time we had that big oil embargo, we were more of a manufacturing society. And now most of our manufacturing takes place overseas. So it's more of a problem for China than it is for the United States. I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm just saying, fortunately, we're not as much of a manufacturing society as we used to be because you need oil to fire up the factories.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch over to the debt.
Sure.
U.S. debt is $15 trillion plus total debt, with annual going about $1.1 trillion annually into the hole.
Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable number. Government spending versus what they're collecting on taxes, it's a problem, and we've already seen our credit rating lowered once. It'll probably be lowered again. That's a smear on our credibility. The thing that I like about it was last time they lowered our credit rating, rates actually went lower because we're a great nation. We pay back our debt. And right now we're borrowing money, thankfully, at 1% to 2%. And fortunately, our economy is not roaring right now because if it was roaring, we'd be borrowing at 6, 7, 8%, and that we would collapse. So it's a problem that we've kicked down the road, but we will need to address. We need to get back to 2008 levels. We don't need to get back to like 1940s. We need to get back to 2008 levels. It's just last couple presidents, $1 trillion became easier and easier to spend.
Yeah, it seems like it's the name of the game right now. Continue to run the budgets up. So when we look at do you have any thoughts or solutions for what you would do if you were in the shoes of the president today?
That's an area that I'm not that smart. I can tell you from a business activity kind of guy, I like seeing small businesses. I like seeing the private sector work more so than the government sector. We've all been in government sector scenarios like the DMV, and they just don't run efficiently, and we get angry and we get upset. So I would rather see more focus on small businesses and small business initiatives on the payroll tax. I'd like to see manufacturing being offered in the United States a lower tax rate. Fortunately, we're a service economy, but tax the services greater than you tax the manufacturers if you want to bring back some of those low-paying jobs.
So, Rob, we need to take a quick break. We're visiting with Rob Black on the 2012 Economic Outlook. We'll be right back after these messages.
Nothing's more important than spending time with your family.
At Greenstone Rogoff Olson Company, we're trusted advisors to the highly successful. Our goal is to help you find the right strategy to protect your wealth for yourself and those you love.
Kids! Why do I feel like I've just had an audit?
As trusted advisors to the highly successful, we'll make sure that you don't lose your shirt.
Roco helping you along the way.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. We're visiting here today with Rob Black on the 2012 Economic Outlook. Rob runs the Rob Black Show every morning on KDOW from 7 to 9 a.m. Every weekday morning. Rob, before the break, we're talking about U.S. debt. Let's move to job creation. This country has probably gone through one of the greatest depressions. Recently, I think it came out in like June of 2009. You always find about when you're in a depression about a year and a half after it actually happened. But what do you think? What do you think of where we're at now with respect to job creation and what's happening out there?
I'm a little bit worried. There's some things to be very positive about in the short term. Windows 8's coming out this year. The iPod, the 5, or the iPhone 5, the iTV, the iPad 3. There's the cloud services are creating a lot of jobs in America, but education's become very expensive in America to the point that there's 4 times as many engineers going to school in China and India as there are in the United States. And engineers create high-paying jobs, and high-paying jobs create high-paying taxpayers. So I'm a little bit nervous. I don't think we go back to 4% unemployment. I don't think we go back to the go-go.com era. I would be pleased with 6 to 7% unemployment. Probably going to be closer to 7% as the real rate going forward.
It was interesting. I was in China a few years back, and we went to this business trade show. And we went in there. The city was Shenzhen. There's about 13 million people. And as we were walking through, looking at the different companies, like we saw the people who made the locks for Home Depot. And we walk over there, we saw this school.
Right.
I said, what the heck is a university doing at a trade show like this? And we started interviewing the people and found out that their school was, in effect, a research and development facility for new technologies, which I thought that was interesting. So when we talk about the education, what we're doing in the U.S. versus what other countries are doing to remain competitive, are we behind or ahead, or where are we at with?
I think as a nation, for our students, we're aggressively behind. But as a nation, for our intellectual property, we're way ahead of the world. A lot of what Apple does is patent-oriented and it's software-oriented. And the first couple generations of the iPhone, very, very hard to manufacture. But we're going to get a point where the hardware is pretty easy to manufacture. It'll be maxed out. It'll be spec'd out. And then that's where the software becomes powerful. So there might be a little bit of a shift back to the United States, doing some of our own manufacturing of tech equipment here. But yeah, competitively, education-wise, I worry about our kids who are in school today, that there won't be the high-paying jobs for them like there was for me.
Interesting. And I think when we look out to the future, the globalization of this world has made it, I don't know, do we still have that competitive advantage?
I think so in some companies. Take a look at Nike and Jeremy Lin from the New York Knicks. Nike could triple their sales in the next 3 years based on having an American-born Chinese as a marketing tool to get into those markets. I like it because Coca-Cola and Pepsi, the big brands, the IBMs, it's an opportunity to expand and to diversify into international markets. And I still think American companies and our form of capitalism is better than any form of socialism, communism, any other form of government, any other form of letting your businesses practice in foreign markets. So, I do feel pretty good about it. Again, as the economy picks up here, I favor small caps. Over the longer term, I think you have to have a portfolio that exposes you to some international flavor.
With respect to coming back to Silicon Valley, Facebook, what impact do you think that'll have here?
Facebook's IPO is, when it does come out, probably this spring. They're saying that it could be a $2 billion windfall for the Bay Area, for the state of California, just in taxes. For the Bay Area housing, I love it because you're going to have a lot of young millionaires that are going to go out and buy houses. In the end, I'm not crazy about IPOs because they're not necessarily earning money. And the whole .com hangover created a little bit of a housing bubble in the United States because these weren't companies that were earning money. These were companies that we were selling to farmers in Iowa. There's this great company called Exodus. They do data services. Company never made a penny.
Hey, Rob, we got to take a quick break. Can I get you to stay over for another segment?
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll be right back after these messages.
Even in times of financial uncertainty, GROCO has been recognized as an expert in the tax field.
People come to us when they need help managing their affairs. They want solid financial advice while lowering their tax burden. For over 40 years, GROCO has been a trusted advisor to many of Silicon Valley's most successful entrepreneurs when dealing with the IRS and state tax authorities. We can provide a level of personal attention you won't find at national CPA firms.
GROCO helping you along the way.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. We're here today visiting with Rob Black. Rob runs a weekly radio show every day from 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning. And we've been talking about the 2012 economic outlook. Rob, let's move into one of your favorite topics, that of retirement. How does a person retire in today's economy? You got all these baby boomers that are aging, exiting the workforce, concerns about Social Security. Give me your take on what you see out there.
I think you have to be realistic and understand that Social Security for the average person is going to be about $20,000 per year. After you pay healthcare costs, it's about $10,000. Can you live off $10,000 a year or less than $1,000 a month? Most people can't. So you have to supplement it. And the best way to do it for the average American is the 401k, 403b, 457 is maxing out qualified retirement plans in your working years from age 20 to 60.
Are you still a believer in stock for the 401k?
Oh, absolutely. Show me any 40-year period where it didn't work. 7 out of 10 years, the stock market goes up. You want bad years because then you're buying at a lower price. You accumulate wealth when you're younger. Later in life, you get fearful of the stock market because that's when you're managing it.
Interesting. So I guess the psychology of trying to time the market is not really a good thing to follow then.
I don't time the market. I've never met a market timer worth $1 million. I know a lot of people who feared themselves out of the market. I know a lot of people who greeded themselves into it. So you get rid of fear and greed, and you just dollar cost average every 2 weeks. And then you start your own business. And there's other ways to do it, for sure. But the easiest way is to be a robot and have a systematic plan.
Is it still a good environment to put a new business, hang your shingle out in this world?
Depends on what state you're in. I own a couple businesses, none of them in the state of California, because I don't think it's friendly enough. Now, again, you own a business in California, so we may argue and disagree. But yeah, if you come up with a great idea, a lot of Web 2.0 companies, Facebook is going to create a lot of businesses. People need to start thinking about, how can I get to that Facebook audience, which is as big as the Super Bowl, times 4 or 5.
It's interesting what Facebook has done to the landscape out here. I look at social media, and you go back to 2002, 2003, pretty much non-existent. But today, it's like you can't live without it.
Absolutely. Twitter has redefined the way I acquire news. I get up every morning at 4:30. I used to go to 20 sites. Now I flick through 20 headlines or 20 sites of headlines. Twitter, great aggregator of news. I think people don't grasp how powerful it's going to be as far as a Web 2.0 company.
Now, I got a question on the twittering, texting. There was a NASCAR guy, I don't remember which driver, saw a news clip this morning. He was texting as he was driving in the NASCAR.
That seems impossible, but
putting it on Twitter, I'm like, wait a minute. I think there's a law against this, but who said it applied to the race drivers?
They're allowed to break the speed limits. They're breaking multiple laws already.
So it's interesting. Well, let's move on about our economic security here.
Sure.
When we look at when we look at this world, where does the U.S. stand comparative to the other nations there?
I think we're a little bit behind some of the European nations as far as what we provide for our seniors. With that said, I think we're providing too much to our seniors because our seniors are starting to live longer. And what was once a great idea in the 1940s, 1930s, people are living 20, 30 years longer than they were back then. So I think it's a bad idea now.
20 to 30 years longer. So what's the average life expectancy right now?
76, 77,
70.
depending on if you're a man or woman. And it may increase even longer. If you hit 70, your chances of hitting 100 go higher. So basically, the years that you might die are the 50s to 60s. Otherwise, you're going to be living a very long time.
It's amazing. And, there's a guy that I knew, still know, but he came in my office one time. He says, he worked with Michael Milken on the cancer research.
Sure.
It was a $100 million fund. So you go to Safeway and they say, do you want to donate $1 to this? It's $100 million of financing annually a year. And he made the comment, he says, we have the solutions and the technology to solve some of the problems today. He said, for example, he says, we can detect breast cancer 8 years in advance before the first lump appears because we know the genetic codes that exist in the system. And I said, well, why don't they solve it? He says, well, we don't solve it because there's too much tied into the politics and the medical device industry that it would take to disarm that in order to allow this to go through.
Money is very powerful.
It's interesting, and maybe this healthcare crisis will actually bring to the forefront to allow the technologies to advance, just like back in the 80s when Ma Bell was put off to the side.
One of the best things you could do for retirement is lose weight. Keep your health healthy, and you'll live longer, and it will cost you a lot less.
There was a movie, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. My friend recommended it. You got to watch this movie.
Okay.
And it was about a guy that he went around the nation juicing and interviewing people. He went on a 60-day fast of just juicing whole grains or vegetables and fruits. And then he interviewed people who weren't on the diet. But this guy was literally, he lost 90 pounds in that 60-day window. And it was interesting when he said that he worked all his life on his career. Yep. At the expense of his health, but I think that's a great point that you make about, getting things in line.
Ultimately, what you don't want to be is 70, 80 years old, overweight, bad health, and no money. So that's my goal, is to get people to retirement with somewhere between $1 million to $3 million so that they could live money-free, no stresses, but also health-wise as well.
Mm-hmm. So do you think people today should be owning their own home? And
Yeah, I have no problem with people owning their own home. I think if you haven't saved enough for retirement, consider downsizing and getting into an apartment. And if you haven't saved enough for retirement, consider working as long as you can, or maybe move into a state with a lower cost of living.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a lot of people in the downsizing, they're moving out of these big homes to keep things more in line with their actual needs.
Yeah, the big mansion house in McMansions, it's overstated. We kind of got crazy with ourselves. I saw that a big celebrity, Michael Jordan, just sold a house with 15 baths in it. 15 baths. Who needs that much?
Oh my gosh. A little over the top. That was my wife. She said we need to go to another community. So the longer this went on, the bigger the houses went. So finally, just said, honey, can you stop? We've almost got our last 3 out of the house. I'm not sure that we're going to need as big of a house as you think we do.
I think women control real estate because of that exact reason, and then they want a good school district for their kids, or they want the good Christmas lane that everyone comes down and lights up their houses. So women control real estate. If it's up to me and you, we'd live in cardboard boxes.
So we're visiting here today with Rob Black. Rob is on every weekday here on KDOW, 12:20 a.m. from 7 to 9 in the morning on the Rob Black Show. Rob, I guess what do you have for final words here for the listeners?
I believe in America. I like your show title, American Dreams. I think capitalism is very powerful. Never sell it short.
Thanks, Rob. We'll be right back after these messages.